All right, guys, it's your old pal Lowball Norm back again for an update on the SICHL to NHL22 project. I am joined by my Assistant Director of European Scouting, Baron Miausmus Maximilian von Kittenstein IV, also known as Max. Max is also the reason why I don't have my orange mood lighting because it turns out Max likes to attack the lights. So we are not going to have that. I wanted to let you know what's going on with the project. For those of you who are unaware, I was trying to create the SICHL League in NHL22 for the Xbox. I had created all of the teams, and then when I went to try and do the custom rosters, I accidentally deleted absolutely everything I had worked on up to that point. It was incredibly frustrating. And so I decided to take a little mental health break to make sure that I did not smash my Xbox with a hammer. I kind of left the project alone. But in the background now, I have started working on it again. I have created all of the teams again. So you're all back. I got rid of the three legacy teams, Quebec and Grand Prairie, and the other one. And I have instead added, because now we have announced the new Sun Devils team. So I've put the Sun Devils in. They didn't have Okanagan, so I had to put you in Kelowna. Hopefully that's okay. And for the other two teams, I decided instead of doing legacy teams, and this was a suggestion on Twitter, I added the Grinders from Newfoundland. Although if you're following the Twitter thread, you know what town specifically in Newfoundland that the Grinders are from. And then I decided for the alternate, for the last team, why not give a shout out to the Insider, the SICHL Insider? So we have the Insiders as a team. So all those teams, that's the new team setup. I've created all of your alternate jerseys, you alternate jersey freaks. I have also done custom goal horns for a lot of things. Some of you guys have mascots now. I mean, I did the whole shebang. All right, the whole shebang. So that said, the critical problem is rosters because this is where I ran into a problem last time. And I've been racking my brain trying to think of how to get the SICHL rosters reflected in NHL 22. And this is where the update flips to a bit of a rant against EA because they have made creating custom rosters as difficult as humanly possible. Okay, as difficult as humanly possible. As you can see, Max is furious, absolutely furious, aren't you, buddy? Yes, furious. Okay, so basically, how it works is I create the franchise for the game, right? The franchise mode for the game. And I have to substitute all of the existing NHL teams with SICHL teams that I have created, right? So, if I, let's say, want to put in the Fire Ants, I replace the Philadelphia Flyers. And so now the Philadelphia Flyers and all the players on their pro roster, they're now gone. And now my team is in there with whatever rosters I've created for it. Okay? So you're thinking, well, that's fairly simple, but it's not because the problem is I'll give you an example. On the Fire Ants, I have Nils Lundqvist. We love Nils. It's great. If I add Nils Lundqvist to my custom roster, and then I replace all the NHL teams with all the SICHL teams, Nils Lundqvist is not on the main roster for the Rangers in NHL 22. He's in the AHL. So what'll happen is the Rangers pro roster will get replaced because we're replacing all the NHL teams. So they'll have Nils Lundqvist on the Philadelphia Fire Ants, but we'll also have Nils Lundqvist showing up in the AHL. So we have two Nils Lundqvists, and this is repeated with all the other prospects that are not on the pro roster because they're in the AHL, because they're in the CHL, because they're in Europe, because they're in a free agent, whatever. Duplicates all over the place, right? So how do we fix this? Prior to starting the franchise, what I basically have to do is I have to make sure that each team that's replacing, so for instance, if I'm replacing again the Philadelphia Flyers, if I'm replacing them with the Philadelphia Fire Ants, I have to change the roster for the Philadelphia Flyers so that it reflects the Fire Ants before I start, and then I replace the Philadelphia Fire Ants. And it means that I would have to go to the AHL, get Nils Lundqvist, transfer him from the AHL to the Philadelphia Flyers pro roster so that when it's reflected, we don't get duplicates. Now, this is a huge pain in the ass because it means that I need to do this for everyone on the pro roster. Then I need to go and find all these guys wherever they are in the minors or in Europe or in free agency or whatever. And I have to individually find them all, transfer them all to every SICHL team. So I'm replacing this like a bunch of million times, right? And so you're thinking, okay, well, that's a lot of work, Norm, but you don't have a life. You're just sitting around the house with a kitten all day. You can do it. You can just take several days of your life to do this. That's no problem. And you know what? I might agree with you. I might agree with you on that one. But here's the other problem. Now you're thinking, okay, well, how can EA make it worse? Well, let me tell you. When you're doing roster transfers, all teams have to at all times meet the minimums, right? Every roster has to have, 2 goalies, X number of players, X number of forwards, defensemen, etc. There's minimum roster requirements, right? So, but even when I'm just making transfers, before I've started a league, before I've done anything with them, they have to maintain those. So if there's 2 goalies on a roster and I'm moving one to a different team because that's the SICHL team it's supposed to be on, it won't allow me to make that transfer because it's going to put the other one under the roster requirement. So I have to find a goalie from somewhere else to put onto there to cover it. So it just makes it all the more difficult, right? Because it means that each step of the way, every single time I'm transferring any single player from one team to another player, from to another team, if it's under the minimums, I can't do that trade. And then I have to do all sorts of other side things for it. It makes it an absolute nightmare. And then on top of all of that, what do I do with the 3 new teams? Right? Now, each roster in when you're creating a roster, it's like 40 players that you're creating in a roster. They can be larger, but it's basically 40 players that you're creating. So you could say, okay, well, we'll take the top 40 players in every team's roster because most people have more than 40 people signed, and everybody left over will be for the other teams. But I mean, how do I? First of all, the teams are going to stink because they're going to be cobbled together with all of our detritus. And on top of that, it just makes things even more complicated because now I have to decide, okay, this guy isn't in the, first of all, I have to decide who's in your top 40, and that's going to be, you guys are going to be complaining about some prospect I forgot about. And then I've got to decide, okay, well, which team do they go to? How do I keep their rosters at all times being even? It's or under the minimums. I mean, it's an absolute nightmare. And then on top of all of that, the one thing you cannot do in NHL 22 is I can't change the AHL team affiliation. So again, if I'm replacing the Philadelphia Flyers with the Philadelphia Fire Ants, that means that my AHL affiliate, I can't customize it to make it the Pit Fighters, first of all, which makes me furious. But my AHL affiliate is going to be the Phantoms. So any prospect that's on the Phantoms that didn't wind up making it to a pro roster elsewhere is now my prospect, right? So if you've got like a third rounder guy who you had drafted, who didn't make your pro roster because there wasn't enough space, or if you're like Guy, who's got 5 million players and 5 million prospects, he's got some third rounder he drafted that doesn't make the cut. He loses him unless he happens to be on the AHL team that Guy is affiliated with, and I get him. So you might get some pretty decent prospects that are some other team's property. And the only other way to fix that is to again go through this entire process I just did with the NHL teams with every single AHL team to make sure that every affiliate also has all of your minor league guys in there as well. Okay. And this is, again, it's an absolute nightmare. I've been racking my brain trying to find some quick, easy way around all this. And I've been on the internet, I've been on Reddit, I've been on everywhere trying to find this. No luck so far whatsoever. So there's basically going to be 3 potential options here. Okay. Option number 1 is that I'm actually going to dedicate a year of my life to to doing this process, and eventually at some point we'll start the league with proper rosters and cross our fingers that I didn't screw anything up and have duplicate players and whatever. The other option is that I find some kind of half-assed way where I say, listen, you know what, I'll transfer a couple of your guys, but the rest of your guys, screw you, it's going to be whatever, you're going to have to just deal with it. losing prospects and all the rest. I don't care. It's going to be too much, right? So we do it the lazy way, but that at least gets, broadly um, how it works. Or we skip the whole thing and do a fantasy draft like I was going to do originally. Um, it's not an ideal situation because ideally you kind of want to see how your team does in the simulation. Uh, but yeah, I mean, guys, it's a lot of work. Like when I'm saying it's a lot of work, it's a lot of work. I mean, and there's like even beyond what I've said, there's like a million other little minor annoyances that go into it. So anyway, that's the update. I'm basically going slowly insane, trying to figure it all out, and I will have to let you know if anybody has any suggestions or if anybody has, if anybody finds some kind of cheat code for me that I can just transfer these stupid rosters. It would be much appreciated. Otherwise, one way or the other, I want to get this thing started soon. So I might just get frustrated and just do the fantasy draft. But if there is a way that I can get your rosters, I will do so. But I don't know, man. All right. From me and Max, goodbye. And I will talk to you soon.